Welcome folks, I am Jaby Koay, joined by ACHARA KIRK.
Hi guys!
This is our non-spoiler review for SHAZAM. We got to watch this twice. The first time was through Fandango, it was an early showing, and the second time was through Real D 3D. So I definitely know how I feel about this film after watching it twice.
Right.
Now I want to say, at the outset, I wasn't sure that I liked it a whole lot. After the first showing, we had an audience that wasn't really laughing, that wasn't really into the film, apparently. I wasn't as into the film. And the second audience I saw it with was at Real D 3D with a bunch of influencers, and they all loved the movie. They were like super enthusiastic about it. I got that through osmosis. Like, I was also enthusiastic about the film because they were. It was like we were having a party watching this movie. It was really cool.
It is a lot of fun anyway.
Overall, the film is really good, I found. There are problems with the movie. Even watching it a second time, I'm like, those problems are still there, but I cared less about it the second time. I think that when you have an audience that's not as into the film and you're not laughing quite as much, it leaves you open to kind of looking at certain negative aspects or flaws about the movie a little bit more closely. Whereas when you're having a blast with a bunch of people laughing, you don't care about that stuff quite as much.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
For me, there were some pacing issues, and it was still persistent even the second time around, where I was like, wow, that's a really long opening to explain this thing that could have been condensed a lot. There were some joke pacing issues where overall, I think editing was the biggest problem with the movie. I thought that there was a lot of great actors in the film.
Yes.
I love the idea. As a family film, it was a lot of fun. It feels very wholesome.
Yes.
And that's cool. The visual effects was fine. I heard some other reviewers talking about the visual effects, and they weren't happy with certain specific moments, but it never bothered me. Both viewings, like the visual effects, I noticed it, but it didn't bug me like it has in other films. Like, for me, it was fine. It was serviceable.
Because I think the main thing that you get from this movie is that it's really fun and it has a lot of heart.
Right.
So you forgive it for any moments where maybe the special effects weren't the best at the time.
I mean, this is supposedly Warner Brother DC's lowest budget film, and it's $100 million, just FYI.
Well, it's so cheap.
Yes, exactly. No, they didn't give this any money at all. I thought that the visual effects were fine. None of it bothered me. I was more caught up in the adventure of the whole thing, both instances. Before we go further into the review, I want to say real quick that I like this better watching it in 3D, through Real D 3D. And the reason why is because, and this is not me kissing Real D's butt, by the way. Like, I genuinely enjoy this more in 3D because it brings out the visual effects more. It makes it more atmospheric in a way because you actually feel like you're part of this adventure. It feels like you're like looking at this through a window, and so it just brings you into the world more. Traditionally, for me, back in the day, 3D, its effect used to wear off after like 20 minutes, and I'd forget. I'm like, oh yeah, I have glasses on. You kind of just don't even realize that you're watching a 3D film after a while. But somehow they've gotten better with whatever they're doing. You know, somehow it still feels immersive all the way through.
And I will say that now 3D is my preferred method of watching any sort of, big blockbuster like this or animation, because I feel like in addition to the 3D effect, which is really cool and immersive, like you said, I just feel like everything just looks crisper. And it's brighter and prettier, and I often do watch the same movie in 2D and 3D, and every time I'm consistently like, I preferred it in 3D.
So yeah, if you're able to watch it in 3D, I would strongly recommend it.
Yeah.
I think that is the much better way to go. So the story of the film was fine. I enjoyed it. Overall, I thought the story was cool. You've got this kid who's in a foster home. He has this new family, and he discovers his superpowers, and he lives this life that a lot of us would love to have lived when we were a kid. He becomes a superhero, and you see a kid realizing his powers for the first time and what he does with those powers. It feels like something a teenager would actually do. It's not particularly useful what you're doing with your time, buddy. Like, that kind of thing would happen with a real teenager. Like, he wouldn't just go off and fight crime like Spider-Man or Superman or Batman. Like, he would waste time. And he would do things that like don't feel like what a superhero should be doing, and he would react to things a particular way as a teenager might. All of that is really fun. Unfortunately, a lot of the good jokes from the story were shown to us in the trailer.
Yes.
And so if you guys haven't watched the trailers in a while, good. Avoid them before you go watch the film, because so many of the good jokes are already in the commercials.
Yeah.
Now, I knew that the second time around, and so I kind of let it go and forgave it for the second viewing experience. But the first time I couldn't help it because I was hoping for more than what the commercials gave me. You just ended up watching the jokes in context when you saw the film. You're like, oh, okay, no. And
I mean, it was still funny.
Yeah.
But for me, I felt like watching so many of the trailers made me view the movie in a certain way. I think it had more of like a comedy Deadpool type vibe. Very, very quirky. And while it still was quirky and fun, I think I just didn't realize that it was a family movie, which seems stupid because it's about kids, right?
It seems stupid that you didn't get that.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. When I started watching it at first, I was like, this isn't the movie that I thought I was gonna watch. But once I fully realized, like, oh, this is like a really nice family movie. Like, well, I don't know what the rating is. It's probably like PG-13, something like that. And it's very pleasant. It's very lovely. And it's very cute and funny. Just like those movies that they used to have back in the 90s and the 80s. Like Home Alone or Big.
It's good campy fun. And now that being said, it doesn't lose its value as just an overall fun adventure. Like, it's still a good film for grown-ups as well. I think that with so many movies veering towards the mature audience, like everything that shows up on Netflix, for instance, that I've seen, I mean, I know there's other shows out there that I haven't checked out yet, but most of the interesting content that's out there has favored grown-ups, mature audiences,
right.
And it's not really for the whole family or for kids. I feel like the best of both worlds because it's an adventure that both kids and grown-ups can enjoy because grown-ups are like, that totally would have been like a dream come true to become like this superhero when you were a kid. You know, there's some great moments, even though a lot of it's in the commercials, there are so many great moments that make the film worthwhile, and I still strongly recommend it. Just don't look at the commercials anymore. Just avoid those at all costs.
Stop.
Yeah.
Erase your memory.
Let's talk about the acting real quick. I think Zachary Levi is great. He very, very much embodies the spirit of a kid and the response of a kid. And like, he brought the script to life, in my opinion. Anytime he wasn't on screen, the film got a little bit more boring. I just thought he was so fun to be around, just his personality.
Yeah, every time he disappeared, I was like, bring him back.
Now, that's both a blessing and a curse of the film, because the actual kid version of Billy Batson, played by Asher Angel, I felt like there was a disconnect between him and Shazam in terms of the personality. I recognize that this is a troubled kid who kind of goofs off, and they just felt like different people, is what it came down to. Like, I get that this is Billy Batson, and I get that this is Billy Batson. I get that they're the same person. It didn't feel like the same person. They're the same person because the movie says so. But character-wise, behavior, it didn't feel like they were the same person.
And I wonder if they had any opportunity to even work together to observe each other, to be like, oh, physically, he moves like this. I mean, I suppose when he turns into Shazam, his physicality can change because he's now a big buff superhero. Like you said, there wasn't really anything that felt like it was a connection between the two. They just felt like two very distinct characters.
That informs one other problem I have with the movie, which is there is this dramatic shift in the film, and I'm not going to say exactly what happens, but it does really, really bank on your connection to these characters, particularly the young version played by Asher Angel. And because I didn't feel as connected to the young version of Billy Batson, that dramatic shift didn't have as much of an impact on me as it should have. Anyway, let's talk about the other actors in the film. Jaimon Hunsu plays the wizard Shazam. We all knew that, right? They kind of hid his face in the commercials, but we knew who it was.
Yeah.
And I thought he was funny.
Is he the only guy that gets away with being in both DC and Marvel?
I don't think so. I feel like there's someone else. I just can't remember who it is. Mark Strong plays the villain of the film, Dr. Thaddeus Sivana. I am always predisposed to liking Mark Strong. I'm always predisposed to liking Ethan Hawke. Like, there are certain actors who I'll just like irrespective of what they do. Keanu Reeves is another one. And he's on a short list of people who I just always enjoy watching. I know that for you, he was a serviceable villain and that was it.
He did a good job as your stereotypical movie villain.
Yes. Hip villain.
Hip villain.
I think he's great. I'm a big Mark Strong fan. I was just happy to see him in this movie at all. Yeah, he was, I guess, stereotypical, but he really leaned into that performance. That's what the film wanted. It was campy.
Yeah.
And so he went for that all the way, and I thought he did a great job with that. I bought him. I bought his endeavor. I bought his frustrations and everything he was doing and why he was doing it. That was not lost on me. If anything, I just wanted more of him. Jack Dylan Grazer plays Freddie Freeman, the disabled kid.
Yeah, he was amazing.
He was so good.
Yeah.
He brought both levity and a sense of grounding the film. He brought both of those to the story, and I thought that he was just well chosen. I like him a lot.
Yeah, and he has great chemistry with Zachary Levi as well. Like, when they're together, it's just magic.
While the dramatic shift that I hinted at earlier was sort of lost on me because of the reason I mentioned, I thought that Jack Dylan Grazer still carried those moments well. Like, I bought his perspective on everything very much, just because he knew how to play those moments correctly. A very likable personality. So as you know, Billy Batson's character is in a foster home with a bunch of kids, And we have a few different people here. The first two people I want to talk about is the young black girl and the young Asian boy. So it's Darla Dudley and Eugene Choi, played by Faith Herman and Ian Chen, respectively. Let me figure out how I want to say this, because I enjoyed what they did, and so did everybody else, including this person.
Loved it.
I enjoyed it. Do not get me wrong. Don't mistake my feelings. Like, I thought that it was really fun, what they did. But I think that is intrinsically tied to the writing being good in their particular area. They're just really cute. Like, the fact that they're really cute scores a lot of points. In watching their performances twice, mind you, I was like, okay, I've auditioned a lot of kids in my time, thousands of kids from commercial casting, and you quickly see who feels like a kid being a kid and acting well, and who feels like a kid trained by an adult. That's a very discernible difference between the two, for me anyway. And so for me, I was like, okay, while I enjoyed the performances, I felt like they were kids who were trained by adults, and they didn't feel like kids. Like when you go back and watch something like Terminator 2, for instance, what's his name? Edward Long feels like a kid. I mean, he's older, obviously. It's like he was like 12 or 13 at the time.
Right.
But he didn't feel like someone performing something the way an adult told him to do it. And I feel like there's a big difference between the two. And so I give it a pass because they're super cute.
Yes.
And the writing for them was super good. Super, super, super. But yeah, so I just wanted to squeeze in that little minor criticism in there. The much bigger criticism I have is with the dad in the movie.
Cooper
Andrews. I haven't heard anyone else complain about him that I've spoken to or watched in terms of their reviews, but for me, like, I just didn't buy into him from the very first moment he's on screen. Both times I watched the movie, I'm like, yeah, I don't know why he's here. That was my feeling. I'm like,
is it because he's too jolly?
It felt like his first movie ever.
No, it is not his first movie ever.
He's been around.
He's been around.
He's got a lot of experience, and I just didn't care about his performance. I'm like, that's cool. I liked everyone else in the family. I just didn't like him as much.
I didn't mind him. I thought that just character-wise, he was pretty true to the character of this kind of like trying to be fun, quirky dad with the dad jokes. There was one scene where he was being disciplinarian. I didn't really buy it that much, but otherwise I thought he was just fine.
There wasn't a single line of his that I liked, except when he thought he made a mistake. There was an instance where he thought he made a mistake. I'm not gonna say what, because it's funny. Me telling you that's not giving anything away. That was the only time I enjoyed his performance. But outside of that, like, nothing he said resonated with me as a human being the way he said it. It felt like he had never acted before in his life. Like, that's how I felt about his performance every time he said lines. But anyway, outside of that, the rest of the cast was good. If there's anyone in particular that you liked after watching the film that I didn't mention, that's okay. I probably like them also. I like the film, and I recommend it. I think it's good fun. It's worth watching twice. I saw it twice, and I wasn't bored the second time.
Yeah.
I actually enjoyed it more the second time, like I said earlier. And I do recommend watching it in 3D through Realty 3D because, again, they're doing a phenomenal job with the 3D now, and it feels immersive overall from start to finish.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't feel like this kind of gimmick that you forget about after a second. You guys, thanks so much for hanging out with us. Do let us know your thoughts and our thoughts, and yeah, cool. SHAZAM. Boom.